Have you ever wondered which consulting firm has the best company culture? Well, in this video, I'm gonna rank the top 10 consulting firms to work for based on their culture. There'll be firms on this list that you already know of, and others you probably have never heard of.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
And the reason I know so much about this subject is that I've spent the past year gathering, sorting, and reading through 31,271 reviews from current and former employees and consultants at various consulting firms. In addition, I started my career as a consultant at Bain & Company, and I've helped over 600 people start their careers in management consulting. And today, I want to transfer all that experience and all that knowledge to you, so that you can make the best decision in knowing what consulting firm is best for you. But keep in mind that even with 31,000 surveys, this is still an opinion of the people who filled out the surveys and myself. So if you disagree or want clarification on something, feel free to comment below and let's get a discussion started so that everyone benefits. As I mentioned, to make this list, I gathered over 31,000 reviews and read through them to be able to make this list. Even with 31,000 data points, I still needed a way to compare different consulting firms because all firms have different sizes, different number of offices, different types of work that they do. So I had to come up with a formula, and I came up with a 63-point formula that stretches the definition of culture. Among this formula includes points such as how collaborative and supportive is the work environment? How much autonomy can you expect as a consultant? How are projects staffed? Do consultants and employees feel like there's an opportunity to get to know their coworkers outside of work? How recognized and acknowledged are the consultants at the firm? How inclusive and diversified is the leadership, as well as the talent pool? Are consultants actually satisfied with their work? And what are the benefits of the firm compared to other firms? So this just includes some of the points that went into this formula. And if you appreciate the hard work that went into this video, reading, gathering, sorting the 31,000 reviews, as well as coming up with this formula, then I would really appreciate it if you could tap the like button, and that would tell me that you appreciate these type of videos and you actually want more like these. All right, let's dive in. Starting at number 10, we have Booz Allen Hamilton, which was founded over 100 years ago. While it is headquartered in the United States, Booz Allen Hamilton has offices in 80 locations all around the world, and they service clients all across the different industries. But what they built their reputation on is public sector consulting, especially when it comes to national defense. But despite the firm being over 100 years old, when you talk to employees as well as former employees at Booz Allen Hamilton, the couple things that you'll always notice is that they talk about how challenging the environment, how innovative it continues to be, how fast-paced but still supportive the environment is. So you're not just thrown on the deep end, but you're actually being challenged to reach your next potential, but at the same time, feeling supported. So that's a huge reason for why Booz Allen Hamilton is a great cultural firm. But there's also a lot of reasons why Booz Allen Hamilton isn't higher on our list. Number one, that I constantly hear and see from employees as well as past employees is that the promotion path isn't quite clear. Second, compared to other firms in the industry, the benefits aren't quite there. And third is that because a lot of the work is done with government agencies, there's a lot more bureaucracy that goes on when it comes to the projects. But if you're okay with this, then Booz Allen Hamilton could be a great firm for you to consider working at or at least applying to. Actually, here at my consulting offer, I've worked with a lot of candidates who came from military families or diplomatic families or just came from military work, so they're veterans. And when they start working with us, they want to transition from the work that we're doing either in diplomacy or in public service or working in the military, and they want to transition into consulting. And one of the firms that they're attracted to is Booz Allen Hamilton, because Booz Allen Hamilton allows you to leverage the experience that you prior had and be able to gain the business skills that you want transitioning into consulting. So this is a huge benefit for a lot of the candidates that we work with who decide to work at Booz Allen Hamilton. And in fact, if that's something that you're thinking about, for example, you want to have a career in the public sector, Booz Allen Hamilton could be a good place for you to start your career. At number 9, we have L.E.K, which was founded over 40 years ago and currently right now has more than 20 offices while being headquartered in the United States. Like many other consulting firms, they work across many different industries and many different functions, but their bread and butter comes down to two groups. First is their life science practice, and second is their private equity group. As I was talking to L.E.K employees as well as reading the reviews, three things stood out to me. First off is people kept talking about how collaborative the culture is. Second, how non-hierarchical the teams are. So even if you're just someone who joined and you're an intern, you can expect to talk to the partner on the project if you have an opinion or if you just want some mentorship advice. And third is a huge perk is that a lot of the projects compared to other consulting firms require a lot less travel. So you're not traveling as much, but you're still getting the consulting work. And because they do a lot of work with life sciences, they're very friendly if you have a life science STEM background. This can include if you're an undergrad majoring in the sciences or you're a PhD. In fact, there have been a lot of students that I worked with over the past year alone who got multiple offers, and they ended up choosing L.E.K over some of the bigger firms because they love the collaborative nature as well as the fact that they get to continue working on the life sciences. So huge plus there. There were also a few things that stood out when I was talking to and reading through the reviews of L.E.K employees that makes L.E.K number 9 and not higher on the list. First off is that the case teams compared to other firms are often understaffed. As a result, there's a lot more work for you to do. Yes, this means a lot more growth, but from a work-life balance point of view, you're tending to work a little bit more hours depending on the project that you're on. So even if it's less travel, you still have high hours. And L.E.K is doing a really good job with this, especially in the last 2 years with more diversity hiring, is that there needs to be a push for more inclusion and more diversity. But again, L.E.K has addressed this publicly as well as privately within the company, that they are doing more efforts to bring in more diversified candidates to the L.E.K leadership as well as the consulting pool as well. At number 8, we have KEARNEY, which is actually going to approach their 100th year soon. And over that 100 years, they've grown a clientele that stretches over 40 countries. So they have offices in over 40 countries, and they continue to expand. And one of the things that you hear about KEARNEY and what makes it number 8 here is that the culture is a very open feedback culture. So not only are you able to share your opinions about how the firm could do better, but also you're going to be getting advice and feedback from others about how you can improve. This leads to better growth opportunities as well as collaboration among the consultants across the different offices. And the second thing that makes KEARNEY stand out is if you look at their statistics and their demographics, they're a lot more diverse and inclusive than other firms. So they got way ahead of the curve here when it came to recruiting for diversity. And you can kind of see this at their recruiting events, on their websites, in their videos, and if you just talk to consultants. And they're very, very open to adjusting to your life situations here. So if you're planning on going back to school, if your significant other is moving to another country, the company does work with you to make sure that you can stay with the company, but still do some amazing work as well. So KEARNEY has a lot to offer here. I can share with you how amazing KEARNEY's culture is based on the story of one of the MCO alumni who's currently now working at KEARNEY as a manager. And at the time, he had just graduated university and he was deciding between what to do. And there was a couple of things. He'd gone to school from the time he was 5 all the way to his KEARNEY offer. And he was getting KEARNEY plus a few other offers. And he was deciding where should he go. And he wanted to take a year off just to go traveling because he hadn't done that before. But also second, he was applying to business school and wanted to be able to go to business school as well without having to think about should he pause, should he travel. And KEARNEY stepped up and said, you can do all that. Why don't you just take a year off, start with us later, and tell you what, we'll actually sponsor your business school, and then you can come back and continue to work with KEARNEY. And that's pretty much what swayed him to take KEARNEY over the other offers. And this is the stories I hear over and over again for people who take the KEARNEY offer. So that's why KEARNEY sits on our list. But of course, no consulting firm is perfect.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
And what keeps KEARNEY from being higher on our list is a couple of things. First off, while KEARNEY does raise the salary to match the industry, they're a lot slower than other consulting firms in doing so with the adjustments. And depending on the project, weekend work might actually be expected. And third is, even though they're an open feedback culture, sometimes consultants feel like the innovation isn't as fast as their peers from other consulting firms. So like all firms, KEARNEY has a couple of things that are doing great for it, but others that it can improve on. But overall, that's why KEARNEY sits at number 8 on our list. Moving on to number 7, we have Bridgespan. Bridgespan is relatively young, being founded in the year 2000, and currently only has 4 offices and 400 consultants. But those 400 consultants and 4 offices really speak for themselves. Because Bridgespan specializes in social impact consulting, it attracts a certain type of consultant who wants to make an impact in the world or eventually work at a nonprofit, for example. As a result, because Bridgespan does work primarily in the social impact nonprofit space, you can imagine the type of talent it attracts is a self-selecting group. But because of that, the culture is very unique in that the people are very close-knit, very collaborative, and because they feel like the work they're doing is meaningful, they tend to stay longer, and the exit opportunities tend to be towards working in nonprofit and extending that. So people who go into working at Bridgespan love the environment because they're surrounded by other people who want to do similar work, and the path ahead of them opens many doors that working at other firms wouldn't. But for what makes Bridgespan amazing, there's also a flip side to it as well, which makes it sit at number 7, which is that because they specialize in social impact work, there's a limited choice of projects that you can work on. Oftentimes, you'll be staffed on multiple projects, so you're juggling 2 projects at once. And third, the exit opportunities are limited compared to others. While if you worked at some of the other firms that were earlier in this list, you might have many opportunities to work in other industries. Bridgespan alumni could work at all these industries too, but the door isn't as open as if you worked at a generalist consulting firm. At number 6, we have Oliver Wyman, which makes its presence known across 30 countries and 70 cities. When talking to Oliver Wyman consultants, you'll notice that they'll talk about how entrepreneurial the culture is, how flat the hierarchy is, and how much they push for sustainability within the work. So it's not just putting in long hours for long hours' sake, but how can we actually do it more efficiently? And the reason Oliver Wyman is number 6 and not higher on the list is that employees at Oliver Wyman will typically talk about the limited options there are for staffing, and also second, how pigeonholed you can feel. For example, if you're doing financial modeling and you're really good at it, chances are you might be pulled into another financial modeling project, even if you're trying to develop another skill set.
I'm trying real hard.
While this does make the work in the teams more efficient, it often leads to consultants feeling like they're pigeonholed into certain expertise really early on. At number 5, we have 𝗢𝗄𝗱𝗲𝗏. 𝗢𝗄𝗱𝗏𝗏 started on his own as the Parthenon Group more than 30 years ago, before merging with EY more than 10 years ago. And today, they have 45 offices worldwide. And because EYP started with its own company before being merged with a Big Four in EY, one of the unique things about their culture that comes up is that you get to see the best of both a large firm in EY, but also you have a boutique-style firm that remains with the Parthenon Group. This allows for a lot of flexibility in your career choices, in your project staffing, and the teams you work with. So there's a lot of benefits here to working at EYP. If it means working within your office, your team, your function, your industry, or transferring to another office completely. So there's a lot to be gained here when it comes to EYP. But there are two things that keeps EYP from being higher on our list. The first is that compared to its peers, EYP tends to have a little bit more hierarchy to it. And second, compared to their peers, their teams tend to be a little bit smaller. So as a result, some of the projects are understaffed, leading to consultants doing a little bit more work and putting in more hours. But having said that, this actually benefits a lot of people. In fact, a lot of the candidates who we work with end up choosing EYP over other firms because they want that challenge.
Challenge accepted.
They want to have the benefits of having a big name like an EY on their resume, but also at the same time being able to work in a group that still has that unique culture of being a boutique. So you benefit a lot from having a diversity of experiences. Even if you're doing a little bit more work than average on certain projects, you're still learning a lot as well. So that's what makes EYP number 5 on our list. At number 4, we have 𝗁𝗲 Consulting. 𝗁𝗲, even though it was founded just 30 years ago, has expanded to over 40 different offices across the world. One of the things that really makes 𝗁𝗲 stand out is that no matter what best of list you look at, it could be the Glassdoor best places to work, the UK best places to work, the Vault best places to work, you'll see 𝗁𝗲 there. And you can kind of see that in the fact that the values in the company, the value they put into work life, the value into social responsibility, and all the growth opportunities that exist within the company itself. So amazing place to work. And out of the people that have come from my consulting office who've gone to 𝗁𝗲, I haven't had anyone who ever complained about it.
I love it!
Well, if there's anything that 𝗁𝗲 could be doing better, it'd be like these 3 things. First is that the work can often be quite siloed. So you might get to know your team quite well, but you might not get to know all the other people as 𝗁𝗲. And as 𝗁𝗲 continues to grow, this becomes a little bit more of an issue. This is something that leadership has taken note of and is addressing proactively. And second is that there's a lot of cultural differences when it comes from the local team and the global team. So I've seen this and heard this from alumni who've gone on to work at 𝗁𝗲, and they start off at the local team and then go on to work to the global team, and you can kind of see the disconnect between the two. And this is actually just normal part of a consulting firm that's growing pretty big, is trying to figure out how to gap that difference between the local and the global. And we see this in other consulting firms as well that are much bigger, is when they went through the same growing pains, they had to deal with that as well. And the third is that even though 𝗁𝗲 also adjusts its salary every single year, they're a little bit slower than other consulting firms when it comes to adjusting their pays and their benefits and their perks. That being said, if you don't mind being part of the growth stage and all the pains that come with it, 𝗁𝗲 could be a fantastic place for you to consider working. At number 3, we have McKinsey & Company. And oftentimes, McKinsey & Company is the company that you think of when you think management consulting. And for good reason. Almost 100 years since their founding, they're in currently 120 offices worldwide with nearly 40,000 employees under their payroll. McKinsey is also known as the CEO factory, and for good reason. The training, the infrastructure, the travel, the professional development opportunities, the staffing, and everything there is meant to give you a world-class training, no matter how long you stay at the firm. And you can see this in how they staff the projects, types of projects they work on, as well as the type of talent and caliber of talent that they hire. No matter if you're hired to work in the Los Angeles office, if you want to work in Paris, Dubai, Singapore, you have that passport to be able to go work across different teams, different functions, and build out capabilities as well. And McKinsey continues to innovate when it comes to being able to open new doors and stay ahead of the business trends. But of course, they're not perfect as well. Often known as the gold standard for consulting, they put themselves truly to a high standard. And as a result, the workload is quite high. In fact, if you look at the hourly averages across different firms, McKinsey on average, though, tends to be one of the higher firms. And oftentimes, a lot of this has to do with the number of travel that has to do. Post-pandemic, you're still traveling more than your peers at other consulting firms. And of course, some candidates have noted that because of the recent PR with McKinsey, there's some reasons why they believe that McKinsey's culture could be a lot better. But there's no denying the caliber of alumni that come from McKinsey and the type of culture that McKinsey has built over its 100 years. At number 2, we have the Boston Consulting Group with nearly 25,000 employees across 100 cities and 50 countries. When it comes to culture, BCG focuses a lot on their people, especially when it comes to diversity, offering a lot of opportunities to develop your career, both inside and outside of consulting. In fact, one of the things that makes BCG stand out amongst all the consulting firms is the flexibility in the career. So even though you start your career in consulting, being a generalist, you can choose to specialize. You can choose to go into an industry role, or you can choose to work at one of the functions that BCG is known for. If you have a knack for entrepreneurship and want to do something in the digital world, you can go work at Digital BCG. BCG is known for the effort it puts into its professional development. So if you're unsure of where you want to be later on in your career, but you want a culture that pushes you to build out the skill sets to be a great business thinker and to be able to push yourself intellectually, BCG could be the perfect place for you. And in fact, even after a certain amount of years at BCG, you can choose to specialize, you can choose to work in an internal role, or you can choose to work in one of the functions. BCG has laid the foundations for a lot of the thought leadership that happens in the consulting world. So if you want to be at the front of that and part of that innovation, and having a culture that supports that, BCG is going to be fantastic. So what stops BCG from being our number 1 slot here? So even at number 2, BCG's amazing firm to work at here is that the 2 things that we hear constantly over and over again and pouring through reviews I see. Number 1 is that even though later on in your career, BCG will open a lot of doors within BCG and outside of BCG, when you're first starting out at BCG, you don't have as much control over the type of projects you take on. So just taking note of that is that the staffing isn't going to be perfect. But of course, if you prove yourself at the firm, then more options will open for you. And second, even though the travel is less than it is at, let's say, McKinsey, you're still going to be traveling quite a bit. So that adds to the number of hours that you're working here. But if you don't mind the travel and you don't mind the fact that you could be staffed on a number of different projects when you're starting out, BCG is an amazing company to work at. And that's why it sits at number 2 on our list. After pouring through 31,000 data points, we finally reached number 1, which is Bain & Company. Bain & Company currently right now has over 15,000 employees across 60 offices and 40 countries. What makes Bain number 1 here is if you have to think about the culture at Bain, it really is summarized in this phrase: a Bainey never lets another Bainey fail. And everything is secondary to that. It means that when you're at Bain, you're more than just a person working there. You're part of the culture. And you can kind of see this from the moment that you join Bain. You're already immediately assimilated to a global training where you get to meet your peers from around the world. After you join your team, you're going to be locally staffed to a project. That means that you're going to not travel as often as you would at BCG or at McKinsey or other firms, but you get to build the culture within the team that you're at and the office that you're sitting at. But also at the same time, even when it's time for you to leave Bain, Bain provides you with an alumni services from the moment that you said, hey, I might be interested in other career paths. And this is exactly what happened to a lot of my peers when I was working at Bain. And still today is that if you're interested in leaving, they're not going to be like, oh no, this Davis is about to leave, we should not give him another project. But they'll actually actively help with you with that search and figuring out what's next for you. And once you leave, staying in touch with the firm is part of the natural process. And you'll get emails, you'll get phone calls, and so forth. It's similar to when you graduate from university. The university is going to do their best to stay in touch. And this is what you see here at Bain & Company. But that's just the professional side of it. When it comes to the Bainey never lets another Bainey fail, it can apply to all different facets of your work, not just when you leave the firm. Even though we had a lot of data points, I want to share a personal story. I remember on my 3rd project at Bain, and I was sitting in the room with the manager, the principal, the partner, as well as a couple other consultants. We were trying to divide up the last slides we wanted to build for the CEO update the following day. And there were 3 parts, and I signed up to do 2 of them. And next to me, the consultant next to me says, hey, Davis, are you sure you want to take on 2 of them? I can take one. He's like, oh, no, it's totally fine. This consultant, this happened to be his last week at the firm, so he was going to leave to join a healthcare company. And he basically was like, well, this is my last CEO update. And he said, all right, but Davis, if you want to take 2, I'll take the other one. I said, oh, it's no problem. I'll get everything done by 9 p.m., go home, have dinner, have a shower, and then wake up next day, meet with the CEO, and give the presentation with you guys. And what ended up happening was that my 2 sections, by 9 p.m., I was not even done with the first section. And so the consultant who was about to leave comes to me and says, hey, Davis, I just finished my section. How about I take your section too, and we split up the work? I said, no, you should go enjoy. It's your last day. Go out for drinks with your friends because, well, you're leaving Bain in 2 days. And he said, well, let me take it. And then we both ended up finishing by midnight. Had he let me stay and do both of these by myself, I probably would have gone the next day to the CEO update in the same clothes as I had the night before. And this was just one of the examples of what a Bainey never lets another Bainey fail means. When you see someone else is struggling, you just don't leave them there to struggle. You go out there, you pick them up, and you help them, and you both cross the finish line together. And there's so many stories like these in Bain & Company. But even though Bain sits at the top of our list, it doesn't mean that it's perfect. So if you're considering working at Bain, there's 3 things I want you to note here that we see over and over again from reviews, from talking with current employees, as well as those who recently left. The first is that there could be a bit of a hierarchy compared to other consulting firms, depending on the project management as well as the team org, which means that you might have less autonomy than if you worked at another firm. Second is that Bain is often taking on new projects to build out new expertise. But when you're taking on a new project with a new client, you want to over-deliver. So as a result, the scope might be huge given the size of the team. This leads to high hours and quite low sustainability while you're on the project. The third is that the promotion time is a little slower, especially at the higher levels. But again, this is changing a lot. In fact, in the last 2 years, Bain has done a lot of work with reconstructing its promotion cycles to be on par. So I expect that this is actually not going to be an issue in a few years' time. But currently at the time of this recording, this is an issue that is flagged by current employees as well as those who recently left. All right, so that's our top 10 list of consulting firms ranked by culture. Just because a firm wasn't on this list doesn't mean that it's bad. It might have meant that 1, we had a small sample size for a number of reviews, so we couldn't extract enough data for it. Or 2, we had data, but it was a small sample. Or 3, we had data, but it was missing certain sections of our criteria, so we weren't able to fully evaluate it. That being said, culture is a very important part when it comes to deciding what consulting firm that you want to work at. And culture is defined differently for different people. So while it is one element of an overall picture, think about other things that would matter for you as well as you're deciding which consulting firm you want to work for. And in future videos, I'll break down other factors such as prestige, exit opportunities, work-life balance, as well as work satisfaction. But for now, consider this the culture piece. And if you're 100% serious about wanting to become a management consultant, I want to make sure that my team and I can help you. Over the years, we've helped over 600 people start their careers in management consulting. And we've done this at an 89.6% success rate. That means that 9 out of every 10 people who we work with land at least 1 offer. And a lot of people land multiple offers. If you're interested in becoming a management consultant, I'll include a link below where you can book a free 30-minute strategy session with my team, where we're gonna get to know you and chart a path for how you can land your dream consulting offer. But you don't take my word for it. Hear from 𝗢𝗂𝗧, who used our program to land 10 offers, and ultimately he chose one of the offers, which was one of our firms in our top 10 list. I'll let him share which one he chose and why he chose it.